Alrighty, I think we're ready to get started. This is going to be recorded, so anybody that can't make it here today can have access to this meeting, but let's jump right in.
Yeah, so we're going to do a quick 30-minute Zoom session and we're going to tackle a question that Amber and I get literally every single day. Is now a good time to buy in San Diego? So a very quick introduction. My name is Michelle Plastiras. I've been licensed for almost 12 years now. I work with Pacific Sotheby's and I've been fortunate enough to have started a team with Amber, who is also a licensed real estate agent, has been in the industry for almost 5 years now. And then we are also joined by Dan Keys, who is a fantastic mortgage broker. And he's going to weigh in at the very end. And he's going to do kind of the meat and the potatoes of this call, which is sort of the back end of what's happening on the financing, what's going on with rates. What is he hearing buyers and sellers express about the marketplace and all of that jazz? So, Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
Okay, here's a quick snapshot of everything that we'll talk about. We're going to dive into the single family home markets and which areas we're seeing it still being highly competitive. And then the flip side of that, what we're seeing with condos, price reductions in certain areas. And then a huge trigger word is insurance these days, where buyers are having increased negotiation power. And then, of course, Dan's part is going to be the interest rates. Let's jump in.
So I think it's important when we're talking about what's going on in the marketplace is typically we're looking at two different product profiles. There's one that is truly a single family detached home. And then most of our other buyers are pursuing other attached structures such as condominiums. And the reason we wanted to decipher the two product profiles is they're very different animals. Like both are experiencing very different kind of ebbs and flows in the marketplace. So not only are we going to give you specific examples for specific neighborhoods, but we're also going to show you some statistics of single family homes versus condominiums.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's so interesting is because if you're looking at the news or if you're looking at any sort of stat website, it shows just a grand overview of San Diego County for single family and condos. So sometimes those statistics are skewed based on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And when we really dove into it, we saw a huge difference in between the two. So we'll talk about what we're seeing there. So first of all, single family homes. We're seeing a lot of competition in a lot of competitive markets like Mission Hills, Point Loma, South Park, coastal communities, or areas like Oceanside, where certain pockets are still quite affordable for what you can get. And the homes that are selling really quick with multiple offers are well located, like
Yeah.
those areas. They're priced really well from the get-go. They're presented really well, like great staging, great marketing. And then an interesting one is that they're move-in ready. It seems like a lot of these properties that have a lot of fixes needed or a full remodel to be done are sitting a lot longer when it comes to the single family homes than the ones that are move-in ready. A lot of our buyers are ready to move in the day that it closes and they don't want to do those repairs. So this is what we're seeing for single family that are going quick.
Yeah, and then let's talk specific examples. So we pulled a couple different zip codes so you could kind of really see and let the numbers speak for themselves. So we do a number of sales in the zip code. It's 92102. It covers Golden Hill into South Park. And within the last few months, we were fortunate enough to have listed a single family detached home on one of the main thoroughbreds. It's a street called Bancroft. And for us, we did a little bit of strategic pricing. We went slightly undervalued, knowing that that would sort of drive up the market demand. But boy, what we didn't anticipate is receiving 17 offers on
Mhm.
this one particular home. We ended up closing around 1,350,000. And then on the reverse side, we represented a buyer just last month, again in the same zip code, detached single family home. I believe we ended up closing closer to 1.4 million.
Mhm.
But we did have to beat out how many other offers?
Seven
Seven,
other
seven other
buyers.
offers. So
Mhm.
that's indicative of how high of demand that specific property profile is. And
Mhm.
then numerically
Yeah,
speaking,
this is a hot neighborhood. So what the stats show us is that we have 30% less homes on the market this July compared to last year in July. So we're having less homes and higher price points. So homes are selling for 30% more this year compared to last year. So those numbers kind of speak for themselves. It's kind of crazy to see, but it's a simple supply and demand type of situation for this community.
Yeah, so a lot of people always ask us, like, okay, what are you seeing? I feel like it's a slow marketplace. And it's like the answer is yes, certain markets and certain property profiles are slow, but for communities like this with detached single family homes under 1.5 million, incredibly competitive.
hmm
And
Here's
then,
another example, Encinitas.
yeah.
So here's a North County community. It's the same exact thing. There is a lot less homes on the market this time this year compared to last, and prices are increasing. So less opportunities for buyers, and that's driving the prices up.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, per Amber's statistics here, it looks like the inventory of homes on the market is down by 26% this July than it was last July. And then home pricing is up by 15.7%. That's a huge jump. It maybe doesn't look that daunting numerically speaking, but we feel it when we're hunting for inventory for prospective buyers in communities like this. We're always waiting for like the right house to hit the market. And when we find anything that's remotely compelling, it does feel like you got to jump on it as quickly as
hmm
possible.
Yeah. Ooh,
Okay.
insurance.
So insurance has always been sort of a hot topic and a little bit of a trigger word, right? So we live in the beautiful state of California, and unfortunately, I feel like as our climate evolves, so has our natural disasters, and
hmm
so has our insurance policies gone up to, kind of compensate for some of these issues here. So as many buyers and sellers know, a ton of major insurers pulled out of California. And what did that translate to? Well, buyers are now, and homeowners are forced to take on higher premiums. And there's even plans in place in California, such as a FAIR plan, which is basically a plan that is specific to fire insurance. It's not a question of can you get insurance? You can. It's just how much is it going to cost you? And I think in years past, people would look at their financial analysis of homeownership, and insurance is always a part of that monthly payment. That's kind of factored in when you're looking at what you can afford. But I think now is the best time to do a little work on the front end and really figure out what a policy is going to cost you. And we are dealing with this firsthand. We have a couple homes that are currently on the market and they are in high fire zones. And even with the fair plan for, a specific home that we have on the market, it's a beautiful single family home, high fire zone. The annual coverage is somewhere between 10 to 12,000 annually, which, is a staggering amount of money. So I feel like the best thing that you can do if you are the buyer or you're representing a seller is just get ahead of it. Have your insurance broker look into these policies on the front end. That way there's not as much sticker shock as when you get, emotionally invested in the home. You kind of already know the spread. It's the same due diligence that you would do if you were going to pull out a home mortgage. You get qualified and you see what your monthly is going to cost you. I would very much advise to do the same when it comes to insurance policies specific to
hmm
high fire zones.
Yeah. We also have a really great contact that we can always
Sure.
share that he's an insurance broker, so he can shop tons of different companies that are issuing policies and share whether it's advantageous to have one overall policy or if you have to get separate policies and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think one other point I want to make on this is there is something called a defensible space inspection.
Mm.
This is becoming ever more popular where buyers are asking sellers to do this. And it's essentially calling a local fire department and having them come out and look at the property and ensure that none of the landscaping is within close proximity to the structure of the home. And same goes for any like, miscellaneous brush. So food for thought, that's also coming into play as much as insurance policies. I feel like defensible space inspections are becoming ever more
Yeah.
popular as well.
Okay, what do we have next? Ooh, okay, we're gonna completely shift gears. So that was all single family homes, especially insurance. Insurance in condos is entirely different.
Mhm.
But we're gonna talk about what we're seeing in the condo market and where buyers are having a lot of opportunities.
Mhm.
So the reality is buyers have a lot more options. We have a lot more inventory throughout the entire county, which means that there's a lot of competition between a lot of our sellers.
Yeah.
There's more negotiation power for the buyers, which results in more opportunities.
So we pulled some stats for 92101, which is downtown San Diego. And I mean, it's remarkable. If you look at it, you can see the inventory from last year compared to this year is up by 22%.
Mhm.
So in July of 2025, there was, close to 298 condos on the market. Now there's 364. That is so much inventory. And what is not depicted in these statistics, and kind of something that you need to take into consideration when you're looking specifically at the zip code, is that Bosa, which is a fantastic developer, has just released their building called Ondia, which is, probably about 8, 9 blocks from the baseball stadium. And they are cutting into a lot of the resale market. So that property alone has sold, I think, approximately 100, maybe 110 units so far. And that's 110 units of new construction. And
Mhm.
that means that's 110 units of resale condos that buyers have, stepped away from. So one, there's more inventory. And then two, having a new developer come in, is sometimes a good thing because it brings in some great money and is a great new product, but it really does cut into some of the resale market. And I personally am experiencing this. I have a condominium of my own on the market. And we happen to be 4 blocks away from this big, new, beautiful building. And we do see buyers that are kind of drifting towards the new construction. And then in my building alone, when I hit the market, there was, I think, 5 properties on, including mine, and now there's 11. So
Mhm.
the competition is incredibly steep.
Yeah, talking about the competition, what we've been seeing with a lot of people that are in the downtown market, and we sell throughout the entire county, and we see this everywhere, but downtown has always been kind of our bread and butter, and we can really speak to this because we have tons of listings here right now.
Mhm.
But the buyers that are out there looking are touring at least 4 to 5 units
Yeah.
in each building. So the competition is crazy. You kind of start to even forget where you've been and what ones stand out. And so when you're looking at things that stand out, it's a lot of the building, the HOA, the reserve accounts, the orientations, the view, how they were prepped, the condition of them. But the biggest thing that we've been seeing is the price, which is crazy. It's good opportunity for buyers, but it seems like a lot of people are kind of racing to the bottom, which is good news for the buyers.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and a lot of our sellers get really anxious, and we do forewarn them on the front end. We give them these statistics. We say, look, some of the market time is a little bit longer. And I think if you are on the sales side of the condominium market, the best thing that you can do is hire qualified agents who are able to detail out the whatever unique features make your property stand out, right? For example, we have a beautiful listing in a downtown building called Pinnacle, and it has 4 parking spots, which is incredibly rare. So when it
Mhm.
comes to marketing properties, knowing that there's steep competition, we kind of go the extra mile. We figure out what is unique about that property and why is it advantageous for buyers to come and look at it. Of course, price plays a big factor into the sale, but we always kind of look for, okay, what is the amenity, or what is the unique factor about the property that's going to get it sold. But to Amber's point, how is it good news for buyers? Well, very intuitively here, higher inventory, prices naturally take a hit. We're also seeing sellers become a little bit more inclined to do seller concessions,
Mhm.
and we'll have, Dan weigh in on this in the end, but there's things like rate buy downs, or sellers are a little bit more amenable to negotiating
Mhm.
repairs or credits. Um, and the interesting thing is, 10 years ago when I started, it felt like when you found a condo that you liked, you had to submit an offer the same day and get it accepted and cross your fingers and toes that you would win. And now, we're seeing buyers really take their time. There's a lot of inventory. There is no real incentive to rush for a purchase.
Yeah. Here's just a graph of this is an example, like
Yeah.
the price chased to the bottom. Say you have a building in downtown or anywhere throughout the county, and there's 4 different units on the market, and they're all pretty similar.
Hmm.
The only thing that people can manipulate is the price. So if one unit's at 900, another unit's at 875, 850, 825, which one is going to get the most buyers through the door initially? So what does this mean for you as a buyer?
Hmm.
There's a lot of good opportunities on finding these really good deals.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you can speak to this,
Yeah,
Amber.
it's not just downtown. We're seeing this everywhere. It just is condos in general, condos, townhomes. twin homes, any structure that has shared walls, it seems like they are sitting a little bit longer and having tons of competition. And stats kind of back that up. But let's talk about, I think Encinitas is the next slide. Yeah. So to compare Encinitas detached homes, which we showed just a little bit ago,
Mhm.
to the attached condos, here is an interesting statistic from the year over year, July 2025 to this time. Prices that have actually decreased a little bit, which is crazy because overall in San Diego, we don't see prices really decrease. Our appreciation in our county is always great. But condos in Encinitas have gone down just a tad, and the inventory is up 22% compared to last year. So that's kind of wild contrast from the detached market.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, let's talk about interest rates. We
Well,
do have a few questions for you, but we can jump into what you wanted to talk about on mortgage rates and that sort of thing.
Yeah, tell us what you know, Dan, and what you're hearing and feeling, because I feel like if anybody has the insider scoop, it's you.
thank you, Amber and Michelle, for inviting me. So when we look at the chart, if we look at the green arrow on the very left where it says 28 war stars, well, so
Yes.
basically right before the war started, February 28th, the oil was about $67 a barrel.
Hmm.
And what, as we can see, for example, to the right of the very left arrow or the candlesticks, and when the candlesticks are going down and they're red, that means the rates are getting worse. So we can see there's a pattern since February 8th till about June, which is where it says the memorandum of understanding signed by US and Iran 617. So the rates have gone worse, they've gone a little bit better, they've gone worse, they've gone a little bit better. And then as of June 17th, when the memorandum of understanding was signed, we all thought that that would open up the Strait of Hormuz and the oil would free falling. Well, within a few days, everybody was shooting each other. If we can see the red candlesticks to the right of that, the rates have only gotten worse.
Wow.
So if we go to the far right arrow, which is where we are today, oil right now is about $83 a barrel, which is lower than the high of about $110. But it's still way higher than before the war. Now,
Mhm.
just because oil is trading at $83 a barrel is more complicated than that because it's going to take a long time for a lot of oil to get out of the Strait of Hormuz. There are tankers that are sitting there. There are facilities that have been damaged. So this could take about probably a year to 2 years, even if they make peace tomorrow, to kind of get the oil flow going. So, what does this mean for us? Well, it's not been good for rates because when the price of oil goes up, that means everything that uses oil, your car, airplanes, manufacturing, everything that needs oil has gone up too. And that has caused inflation, and inflation are bad for rates. So, we can see, for example, before the war, our average conforming conventional rate was probably in about the mid to high fives, and the
Right.
government rates were in the low fives. So you could get a VA FHA rate, again, depending on your credit, probably 5.2, 5.3 before the war started, and a conventional loan 5.5, 5.7. Right now, as we fast forward till today, the VA FHA rates are probably right around 6%, maybe a little bit under that. And our regular conventional deals, again, depending on your credit and what have you, are in the mid to high sixes. So, and maybe even a little bit higher than that. So, so that is really one of the collateral impacts of what the war has done. Now, again, this chart is how we're monitoring what the bond market has done even more specifically. So, before the war started, the 10-year bond, which is what a lot of lenders kind of put the barometer of the long-term rates, even though our rates are 30 rates or 20 years or whatever, but a lot of people go off the 10-year. So
Mm.
before the war started, the 10-year was at 4.03%, and today it's about 4.668. So it's about 5/8 higher than the war started. Well, we can see that the yield of these bonds has gone up, which is why the rates are higher. So until we don't get back to about that 4% level, which is going to probably take a while to get there, we're not going to see the rates we had before the war. Now, the Fed is trying to buy bonds. They're trying to put a stranglehold on Iran. Again, nothing is going to happen tomorrow, but unfortunately, this has caused our rates to jump. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the other way we have to track what all this means is the Fed, who sets the monetary policy, looks to see what the inflation is doing as of July, because the August CPI numbers are not. The month, the year is inflation is running about 3.4%. And historically, the Fed has only liked to see inflation hovering around 2%. So we're still higher than what the Fed wants on its comfort level. So inflation is still quite a bit higher. Now we have a new federal chairman, Kevin Warsh, who came in May after Powell finished his term. There are 3 more meetings. There's one in September, October, and in December. So the consensus is that there is a strong likelihood that the Fed may raise the federal funds rate. And they would do that because they don't like where inflation is heading. Now, it could be that they don't do that, but if the Fed does do that, it signals to the market that inflation is more out of control than what the Fed wants. And that will probably have a negative impact on our rates. So there's a meeting coming up around the corner. I'm not sure anything will happen at that meeting, but there are 2 more meetings and something could potentially happen in one of those meetings. And again, until there isn't a resolution with the Strait of Hormuz, which over 20% of the world's oil flows through, we're not going to see our rates stabilize. Now, I've been doing this for a lot of years. Historically, these rates have been right around 6%. We are over that, but we're not at like 8 or 9 or 10 or 12%. So historically, these are still great rates. And back to what the girl said, yes, there are certain homes like condos that have more inventory and certain things are sitting there. But I really believe that a buyer who finds the right property will buy that property, whether the rate's 5.5 or 6%. And there are creative ways, and there are ways of getting the rates down. So, but a great opportunity buy. I mean, it's been many years since the buyer has been able to actually negotiate an offer. Before, they'd be one of 50 people, and they probably didn't get the house, and the home was listed for $1 million and sold for $1.5 million. So right now, there's definitely more negotiation, and we don't know when it's going to turn again, where there may not be that flexibility. But right now, I think if you ask me, I would say probably in the last 5-6 years, right now is the best time to buy a house. And the rates, they will eventually come down, but the trick is to finding the right house.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then
We had a few questions for you.
yeah, I mean, so Dan, I mean, this is a little bit more of a less statistical question and just more of what you're hearing. Like, what's the general morale of buyers when you're giving these interest rates? Are they blown away by the monthly mortgage payments? Are they able to stomach it? Like, what are you hearing just in terms of like the overall morale of buyers?
Believe it or not, Michelle, very few people are really pushing back on the rates are. I think they're like, oh, it's higher than it was before. But I have yet to hear somebody saying, I'm not buying because the rate is X. I'm not
Right.
that and I probably talk to at least 20, 30 buyers a month who apply with me or whatever. Not that they all turn into deals, but when we send them payments, I think they're just like, okay, well, maybe I need to look for a little bit lower. I need to put a little bit more money down. But there's a lot of money. A lot of buyers are getting gifts from their parents for down payment, because I think the parents are realizing that they don't want to wait to pass away to inherit the money. So they're actually, trying to disperse their the inheritance earlier to help their children buy, so they can be grandparents or have their children closer or open a home. There's a lot of that. And as far as the future, I'm always optimistic. I think there is no place better than San Diego to live in the world. I've always said before, everybody should own 1 home in San Diego. Now I say everybody should own 2 homes. I think you should have a primary and a rental unit.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look out the window and you see our weather, you see our ocean, and you see our location, there is nowhere better in the world than San Diego. And we're blessed to be working here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because when I was talking to Amber off camera, I said, some of these numbers sound really daunting one direction or another, a little intimidating if you're jumping in for the first time as a home buyer, a little intimidating if you need to move a property. But the reality is, home ownership in Southern California, specific to San Diego, historically has been such a wonderful investment. And I mean, there's also a lifestyle component that's unquantifiable. And we live in one of the best places in the world. And time again, like this is, a wonderful investment, I think. If you can, save your pennies and it makes sense and you can afford that monthly mortgage, I think it is so advantageous for you to build a life here.
Exactly.
And then
And I
Amber
think more buyers are not even focusing on those rates that we had on COVID. We're like 3.5 years
right.
past.
We've kind of
Everybody was
that.
like, well, what about my neighbor had this? I think everybody has realized that the rates we see now are very much right in the middle of what the historical number has been, right around 6%ish. And again, like I said, it's a little bit higher than that right now, but that's a very, very historical average for what the 30-year fix has been. So we're
Yeah,
basically right in there.
and I think we'll do one concluding question that I thought Amber, eloquently asked me, and I said, that's really a Dan question. And the question is it more advantageous to
Mhm.
do a rate buy down, or is it better to do, a what was it? It's either a rate buy down
Or price reduction.
or a
Yeah,
price
what's better,
reduction.
having a lower rate and a higher purchase price, or a higher rate and a lower purchase price?
So on a global sense, it's
Yes,
always better to have a lower price than a higher rate. And the reason being is that you can always refinance in the future,
right.
right?
Hmm.
But if you pay a high price, you can't refinance the price you paid in the future.
Hmm.
So if we're between like 1,200,000 with a 6% rate or 1,400,000 with a 4% rate, you're better off going with the 1,200,000 and the 6% rate, and praying that we'll refinance that in the future. And yes,
Right.
the
Yeah.
payment is higher, but again, remember your property taxes are higher. Everything is higher based on the higher purchase price.
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about a difference of 10 or 20,000 on a price, usually I recommend to do either a 1-1 or a 2-1 buy down or some kind of a permanent buy down, or to use that seller credit to offset closing costs. And again, it just every buyer is so individual. We
Yeah.
just have to see what their need are. Some people need that buy down to get under that 50% debt to income, for example.
And for people that don't know, Dan, can you quickly explain what a rate buy down means, and if you're seeing that being prominent in today's market?
Yes, Amber. So there are two forms of buy downs. One is a permanent buy down, meaning you pay X amount of points or discount points to go, say, from a 6.5 to 6% rate. And let's just say, for example, randomly that cost is $20,000, right? Whatever that number is. But then your rate is 6% for 30 years. It'll never change. There's something called a temporary buy down, and there are several flavors of it. There's a 1-1 buy down, a 2-1 buy down, a 3-1 buy down. Those are not permanent. So, for example, if you do the most common, which is a 2-1 buy down, and let's just say, for example, your starting rate is 6.5%. So in year one, the rate will be 2% lower. So your payment would be based on a 4.5%. Year two, your rate will be 5.5%, which is 1% lower than the 6.5. And year three, your rate would be 6.5. And for the next basically 28 years, unless if you do a refi, you're at 6.5. That there are a lot of people are going for that. That's something that the seller can credit towards. And I think some people are saying, okay, well, if I do the 1-1 or the 2-1 buy down, that gives me a little bit lower payment, and I'm just going to hope that the long term rates come down within that horizon, and that way maybe I'll wind up with a 5.5 or 5, whatever that number is. So they're
Right.
both great options. I think the question is which flavor works better for the buyer, and every buyer's very different on what their wants and needs are. But they're great tools to help lower the payment and get more people in the homes.
Yeah, it helps get people into the market, which
Yeah.
makes
Mhm.
sense. And using that negotiation power to get the seller involved kind of helps offset those costs, whether it be a rate
And
reduction
you
or
can
a
do a
purchase price.
permanent buy down on any loan product, the jumbo, FHA, VA, conventional. You can do the temporary buy down on all the products, FHA, VA, conventional, jumbo. Most of
Right.
all the lenders offer that. Maybe some don't, but for the most part, as a broker, I have access to all the lenders who have the ability to accommodate those programs.
Right. So I guess our very long-winded way to answer the question,
Awesome.
is it a good time to buy? And the answer is yes, it is a great time to buy. Depending on what you're looking at, every purchase is different, every buyer profile is different, but the overarching answer is yes, it is absolutely a great time to buy. And as promised, we are right at the 30-minute marker.
I
We
just
want to
want to add one thing, Michelle,
Oh,
Amber, you
sure.
two are just incredible. It's been
Oh.
a real pleasure and honor working. I don't know two girls who work harder than you, who wear your heart on your sleeve, who
Oh,
who, who have probably the highest happiness score of all the people that work with
oh,
you.
thank you,
I mean,
Dan.
you two are really amazing. And please follow Amber and Michelle on social media too, because they're a hoot.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for everybody who joined or is watching this on the recorded. We hope it was informative. If you have any questions for us, please call us, text us, email us. We're going to start doing these segments a little bit more frequently so that we can ask questions that we are getting every single day, and just we want to be a resource for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you so much for watching.
And here's Dan's
And
contact
Dan's
info.
contact info
Guys,
for.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dan.